Good afternoon. So we're in week 7 already. So that means that we're more than halfway through this class. I am so glad that you are all with me today because today we are going to do business communication. So for this week, week 7, you have 2 assignments. You have to do your week 7 forum where you tell me the topic of your essay 2. And then you're also going to do your week 7 quiz. So you have 2 assignments this week 7 forum and the week 7 quiz. So without further ado, I always say that in every lecture, I am going to start my business communications lecture. So I sometimes do lectures on topics outside of your textbook so that you're able to see how what we are learning in this class relates to your other classes and relates to your workplace, so that you don't seem to think that after you finish this class, you'll just forget about the writing process. So actually the writing process is used in everything that you write, from a science paper to an email to business communications. And so what I try to do is I try to tie together the different aspects of this class to different aspects of your life and how you can use what I teach in this class to the outside world. And so today's lecture, I will apply the writing process to business communication. Now, business communication differs from academic writing in many ways. When we do academic writing, we are writing about somebody else's research. So when we research a topic, let's say we're doing gun control, then we have to research that topic about what other people have written about that topic, about what other people have written about that topic. And that's why we use, when we do a academic research, we develop a professional academic voice, and we use third-person case. Third-person case means that you're writing about somebody else. You're not writing about yourself, and you're not talking to the reader. Therefore, when we write an academic paper, we want to avoid using first-person case, I, me, we, us, and we want to avoid using you and your. So we want to avoid directly talking to the reader like this. See how annoying this is? That's what happens when you use you and your, and you're telling, and you should avoid doing this, that sort of thing. So that's why we avoid you and your. I did that on purpose for fun. So that's why, in order to develop that academic voice, that is a professional voice, we maintain a professional tone. And so when we do academic writing, we're writing about what other people have researched. We're writing about other people's experiences in order to justify our thesis. And so in the week 9 persuasive essay posts, you will be using third-person case. You will not be using any first-person case like we've been doing with essay 1 and essay 2. We will not be using you and your, because you and your is too conversational. However, in business writing, we do use a lot of you and your. Oh, I just finished saying that it's too conversational. Why would I use you and your? That's because in business writing, we want to talk directly to the reader because we want to sell a product. We want the reader to come back and do business with our company. And so business writing can be more conversational than academic writing. Academic writing, out of all the forms of writing, is the most formal, because in academic writing, you're simply writing about your topic. You're writing about what somebody else already wrote about your topic. And so academic writing has to maintain an academic voice of third-person case. So instead of saying, I have to go to the store, you would say, Robert needs to go to the store. So I'm talking about somebody else having to go to the store. I'm talking about somebody else's experiences in order to do research on somebody else. So that's why in research papers do require a more distant, formal, professional tone. But when we do business communications, we do want to talk to the reader. We want to draw the reader in. We want to draw the reader in because we want the reader to buy our product. We want the reader to have confidence in us. And so that's why sometimes business communications can have you and your in it. So without further ado, I am going to start my presentation on business communication. Let's see, share and share. So I will start from the beginning, and I hope I can hear. There we go. Yes, so business communication. So the building we're going to go over in this presentation, we will go over the building blocks of effective messages, letters, memos, and email messages, interpersonal communication, and reports. Why are we learning business communications in an English composition class? Several students asked me to create this topic so they could learn better business writing, since this is a writing class. And also, I wanted to point out differences and similarities between personal writing, business writing, and academic writing. The building blocks of effective messages. Building goodwill. One of the most important aspects of business communications is that you want to build goodwill between you and your client, so that you want the client to come back to your company. You want the client to come back to do business with your company. The benefits of good communication skills. The key to success in the workplace is good communication skills. Stephen Reeder has found that among people with 2-year and 4-year degrees, workers in the top 20% of writing ability earn on average more than 3 times as much as workers whose writing skills fall in the worst 20%. So this translates into, if you have good writing skills and you have good communication skills, you earn more money. When writing is not as good as it should be, your organization pays a price in wasted time, wasted efforts, and loss of goodwill. Bad writing takes longer to read. Studies show that up to 90%, 97% of our reading time is taken not to move our eyes across the page, but in trying to understand what we are reading. How quickly we read a text is determined by the writing style of the text and how well it is written. So how frustrating it is if you read an email and the message of that email is not clear, and you have to sit there and wonder, what exactly was that person trying to say? So I've actually had a lot of email where the boss wanted me to do something, but then the boss wasn't very clear what he wanted me to do. And as a result, I would have to try to interpret what he wanted me to do. And you don't want your workers to try to interpret, because each person will interpret that same message differently. So it is very important that the writer develop good writing skills so that he can write a clear, concise message. So one good tip for good business communication, stick to one idea per email. Stick to one task per email. At most, you would want 3 different items on an email, but not more than that. If you try to stick in 10 or 11 things to do on an email, the person reading it will get lost, or the person reading it may misalign or misunderstand. Okay, that's the one. Misunderstand. That's happened to me, where I used to write long-winded emails, and then the boss would skip over and skim the email, not read the whole thing, and misunderstand the whole thing. Then I waste a lot of time trying to tell the boss, that's not exactly what I wrote. So you want to avoid that kind of misunderstanding by writing clear messages. That means that you have to have good writing skills. You need to sit down and actually take the time to think about, what am I going to write? How am I going to, just like you would your essays. And so when we write anything in business, we use, yes, folks, we use the writing process. And you thought it was a writing process only for this class. No, the writing process consists of pre-writing, writing, and rewriting. Even a short 2-sentence email goes through the writing process. It simply means that you sit down and think about what you write before you write it down. And you make sure that whatever you write is concise, to the point, polite, and just one simple idea. So that way, nobody can misunderstand one simple idea. Part of building a good image is taking the time to write correctly. Even organizations that have adopted a casual dress code still expect writing to appear professional and be free of grammar errors. So don't forget your spell check. Benefits of good writing: it saves time, it makes your efforts seem more effective, it increases business and projects a professional image of you. You end up communicating your points more clearly, and then you build goodwill between clients. And so what are the benefits of good communication skills? More money in the till, more clients believing that your company knows what they're doing. If you write a letter filled with grammar errors, then the impression or the professional image of your company could be tarnished, because then the reader will think that this person didn't take the time to go through the details of correcting their grammar, thus projecting a very unprofessional image of the company. Adapting your message to your audience. Now, that's the big topic I'm talking about at my other school. Whenever you write anything, whether it be just a short email to a long report or an oral presentation, you have to take into account your audience. Who are you writing to? For instance, if you're writing to a friend, then you can let your hair down, use slang, use contractions, and you can use very familiar language and slang. But if you're writing to your boss, you have to use formal English. You have to avoid cliches. I actually had a student in my class who used the expression, monkey see, monkey do. And when you write to your teacher, we're not going to be using cliches. And so when we write papers in our class, we want to maintain a professional academic voice. And so you want to adapt your message to your audience. If I'm going to write for children, it's okay to write a story about talking animals. But if I'm going to write a story for adults, I usually use a more serious tone, or even for teenagers for that matter. I use it, so I adapt what I write to my audience. So tone, style, diction, purpose. Those are the 4 elements of how you adapt your message to the audience. And also the expertise of the audience. Are they experts in your topic? If they're experts, you don't have to define every little word. But if the people in your audience are beginners and you have technical words and jargon you use in your speech, you will have to define a couple of them. If you use alphabet soup, like I'm going for my RN because right now I'm a CNA, well, not everybody's going to know what CNA stands for or what RN stands. And so my English teacher used to tell me, just assume that the reader knows nothing and go from there. That doesn't mean you have to define every little thing, but it means that you have to not take for granted that your reader knows everything, and you just assume the reader knows what you know. So adapt your message to your audience. The 7 C's of communication is that your message has to be clear, concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete, and courteous. And so I will take each one of these one by one to explain what I mean by clear, what I mean by concise, concrete, correct, coherent, complete, and courteous. Clear. So number one, the number one of the 7 C's is your message needs to be clear. Make sure you focus on one central idea in your message. Make sure your body paragraphs all relate to the main idea. If you have coherence in your message, then your message is clear. So just like when we write an essay, you need to have an introduction with a thesis statement, you need to have a body paragraph, and you need a conclusion paragraph. And so unlike a research paper where you might write 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs, in business writing, you probably only need one body paragraph and one introduction paragraph, one conclusion paragraph, especially if you're writing a business letter, business proposal, or a business report. If you're writing an email, you just need to write one sentence or 2 or 3 sentences, but you're still going to make sure whatever you're writing is clear and focuses on one idea. Concise. So you not only have to focus on one idea, you have to keep it short. So focus on one idea. All details have to support that idea. Keep it short to avoid misunderstandings. Keep it short because your boss does not have the time to read a whole book at work. In other words, if you write an email that's as long as a book, nobody's going to have time to read the whole thing. At best, people skim what you read. And so they might miss a few points if you write too much. And then as soon as people miss a few points, that results in misunderstandings. So and then when you write, keep it short. Concise means short. So get rid of filler words like, for example, to make your message shorter. Concrete. So here we are on number 3 of the 7 C's of business communications. When your message is concrete, then your audience has a clear picture of what you're telling them. There are details, but not too many, and vivid facts. And in your message, there's also laser-like focus. Your message has to be solid, as long as you keep it concrete and make sure that all the supporting details relate back to your thesis statement. Correct. This one is simple. This means you don't have grammar mistakes, you don't have punctuation mistakes, and because too many grammar or punctuation mistakes projects an unprofessional image of your company. When your communication is grammatically correct, then you project a professional image, and also your boss will be impressed by how you write. I remember I had a student who, after he took my class, he learned how to write a clear message. He learned to focus on only one idea at a time, and he learned to pay attention to grammar. So after he started doing all of that, his boss was impressed. They were impressed with the difference, like night and day, between his writing before he took his writing class, after he took his writing class. And this particular student was a military student. So his commanding officer used to send back his writing because it was filled with errors. And then the commanding officer said with like this to the soldier, you need to go back to school, learn to write. Because everybody, you don't realize, everybody behind your back, all the officers on top are all laughing at your messages, okay? I care about you, so go back to school. And so this particular student did. He went back to school, took my writing class, and now everybody marvels at how well he writes, how clear his messages are. And now the upper management laughs at somebody else's messages, but not his. And so that particular student became very grateful, thankful to me for teaching him that the thesis statement is the last sentence of the first paragraph. He says that forever, he's going to remember that one idea. And so when your communication is correct, you can please the boss, you can please your audience. But correct communication requires error-free communication. So you have to ask yourself, do the technical terms you use fit your audience's level of education or knowledge? Have you checked your writing for grammar or punctuation mistakes? Remember, Microsoft has spell checker and grammar checker, so you should make use of those. And all names and titles need to be spelled correctly and capitalized. Coherent. When your communication is coherent, it's logical. All points are connected and relevant to the main topic, and the tone and the flow of the text is consistent. Complete. In a complete message, the audience has everything they need to be informed, and if applicable, take action. Does your message include a call to action so that your audience knows clearly what to do? Have you included all relevant information, contact names, dates, times, locations, and so on? And so there's nothing more frustrating than receiving an email that has an incomplete message, or it has a task you're supposed to do, and you have to interpret what exactly does the boss want me to do? And that just, as I said before, wastes a lot of time. And also, when you do somebody's job performance review, and someday when you're the boss and you want to critique your employee's work, just like I said in the peer review lecture, you need to use actionable suggestions. Don't just say, John, your work sucks. You need to say something like, John, you need to stop saying, you know, at the end of every sentence, because that really annoys the other team members in your work team. So an actionable suggestion reflects a complete message, whereas an incomplete message would be something like, your language is too casual, John. You need to be more formal. And then John has to wonder to himself, what exactly does the boss mean by formal? What does he mean by casual? So it's always good to spell out exactly what you mean in order to have a complete message, and in order for your worker to know exactly what it is you want him to improve on. Courteous. Courteous communication is friendly, open, and honest. There are no hidden insults or passive-aggressive tones. You keep your reader's viewpoint in mind, and you're empathetic to their needs. In other words, be nice, play nice. So instead of being too aggressive or being too passive-aggressive, passive-aggressive means that you don't give an actionable suggestion because you're trying to hide how you truly feel. And so you just simply say, oh, John, your language is too casual. And then, so it's always good to say exactly what you mean and be courteous about it and be polite. There's no need to be mean or angry or nasty. And also, and this is advice that I have to follow through as well, is if you want, before you send an angry email, you need to calm down. Because if you send an angry email, you're not being courteous. So an angry email would be, your work it really sucks. What are you thinking of? Where were you? You know, that sort of thing, okay? That's not going to get good results. Instead, you need to calm down, take a walk, and then you send the email in a more courteous tone saying, you need to improve on your work style. You need to improve on that sort of thing. And that's advice that I give to others. I too have difficulty in following up, because sometimes I too have sent angry emails because we all get wrapped up in our emotions. And so the hardest thing for us to do as humans is to walk away from those negative emotions in order to calm down. So always be courteous. And I think being courteous takes courage. So what are the 7 C's of communications? Do you practice the 7 C's of communication, of being courteous, of being concrete and concise? If you can follow the 7 C's of communication, then you're off to a great start on doing great business communication. I remember when I was teaching the business communication class at another school, the very first thing we did as teachers was to teach students these 7 C's of communications. And we used to grade everything that the student did in that class based on those 7 C's. The entire rubric would be like, did the student paper, was it courteous? Was it concrete? Was it, complete? Was it correct? And so on and so forth. And each of the 7 C's was worth, I think, 15 points or something like that. So planning, composing, and revising. So just like I said, when you write anything in business writing, it's just like when you write an essay, where you have pre-writing, writing, and rewriting. And so in pre-writing, you are thinking of, what am I going to write? What's going to sound good? What one message do I want to put in this email, business letter, or proposal? Then you sit down and you think about, for me, I need to visualize the paper in my head before I can write it down. So for me, pre-writing for me is visualizing the paper in my head. Then I sit down and I actually write it. You don't actually have to physically write an outline for every little thing you write. Instead, the writing process should become automatic in your head. So in your head, you visualize the outline, you visualize the topic, you also visualize in your head the one idea that you're going to write about. And that would be pre-writing. Then writing means you actually sit down and write that email and write it carefully. Then revising means after you write the email, and that's post, either known as, this is the 3rd stage of the writing process, is either known as rewriting or post-writing, where after you write it down, you take a couple of minutes to make sure you have no typos, no spelling errors. Most people just write their email and send it. How many of you have done that? You just write it and send it, and you don't think about it. And only later do you realize, if you're lucky, you realize, oh, there's a typing mistake. Now, most of the time, if people make typos, it's so minor that most people won't correct you. But if you do make a mistake, like I think I gave this example to my other class, where our boss misspelled the word bowling. Now, he meant to say, this Friday, we're all going to go bowling this Friday, and we're all going to develop our team spirit. And then instead of writing bowling, he stuck an extra E and wrote bowling, as in BOWELING. Let's all go bowling together this Friday. What a difference an E makes. Obviously, we all know that bowling means that we go on the toilet and do number 2. So let's all go on the toilet and do number 2 together this Friday. I don't think that's what he meant. And so I remember at the time, this actually happened to me when I was working in an office. And then each worker looked at each other and said, okay, who is going to correct his spelling? We were all afraid of him. Nobody dared to correct him. Instead, everybody laughed at him behind his back. You don't want to be laughed at behind your back just because you have a misspelling. Another misspelling was public parking. He meant to say public parking is at the back of the building. And he forgot to write, I think he left out the L. This is the same boss, by the way. It's always the same guy. He left out the L in public. So it became PUBIC. Parking is at the back of the building. I'm not going to say what that word is, but I'll let you spell that out. PUBIC. No L, is at the back of the building. Not quite what he meant, I'm sure. So just like when we pre-write for an essay, we also pre-write for any business communication. You decide on what you want to write about. You write about just that one idea. You provide details that support just that idea. You create an outline of what you want to write about, and you create a visual outline in your head of what you want to write. Then you sit down, the second stage, you sit down and you convert that visual outline in your head into paragraph format. And you stick to that one idea and you use proper APA formatting. You can use a template of another memo, email, or business letter to base your writing on. And usually your company has the templates available. So you simply look at other templates of memos and emails sent by that company. When I first started working in an office, I remember I was just a teenager. I had no experience at all in an office environment. I had no idea how to write a memo. I remember that the senior secretary at the time said, templates, templates, templates. Just look at the template, just see how someone else wrote the memo before you, and all you have to do is just stick in today's date and today's information and that sort of thing. And that's it, and just follow the same format as everybody else. And so I remember that very first month I was working at that company, everything was template, template, template. I used templates of other people's business letters. I used templates of other people's memos. And I also used templates of other people's business proposals. I think I was about 18 years old. I was just out of high school. And so it was right before I started college. And I'd never worked in an office. My previous jobs had been delivering the newspaper and retail. I was a cashier at a dairy store. I was a cashier at Dunkin' Donuts, that sort of thing, but never an office job. That for the first time for me was when I was 18. And also I delivered newspapers. So templates, templates, templates. How to solve business communication problems. Understand the situation. Analyze the situation with analysis questions. Brainstorm solutions. So questions for analysis. Who is your audience? What characteristics are relevant to this particular message? What is your purpose in writing? Is it to inform, to educate, or persuade? What information must your message include? What reasons do you have for your position? What objections must you overcome? What aspects of the total situation do you need a response? Grammar tips. Use words that are familiar to people. Avoid big words people may not understand. In a sentence, keep your subject and verb together. Use parallel structure. Use you. So in business writing, you can use you. So in business writing, you can directly address the reader. You just can't do that in academic writing. Make sure each paragraph has 5 to 7 sentences and expresses one idea per paragraph. And I've noticed that some of the students in this class, you write paragraphs that are way too long. And the disadvantage of long paragraphs is that the reader loses attention. The reader brain is not going to capture all the details of that paragraph. That's the reason why we write shorter paragraphs, because we figure you should figure that the reader has a short attention span, just like you do. When you read something and it's really long, do you pay attention that much? No, you get fatigued. So it's always better to write short paragraphs. And if you're going to write for the internet, you can write even shorter than 5 sentences, more like 3 sentences if you're writing on the internet per paragraph. Use transition words to enhance the flow of your ideas. Use active voice verbs. So if you're not going to write a science paper, then you need to use active voice. Active voice means that the subject does the action in the sentence. Passive voice means the subject receives the action of what's happening to it. So if I said that John ran over the cat, oh, that's gross. But anyway, and then that's active voice because John is doing the action of running over the cat. Passive voice is the cat is run over by the car. So the cat is doing nothing and the car runs over it. So that's when the cat is in the subject portion of the sentence and it's passive. That's why it's called passive voice. Vary your sentence structure. Don't use simple sentence, simple sentence, simple sentence, one after the other. You should learn how to combine sentences using coordinating conjunctions like fanboys, for and nor, but, or, so, yet, or using subordinating conjunctions. And then you make complex sentences out of your sentences. So that way you can combine several ideas together. And so you need to learn your sentence structure. You need to know, like the back of your hand, that the three kinds of sentences in English: simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence. So have a healthy amount of compound, complex, and simple sentences in your business letter. Now for your email, you can stick to a couple of simple sentences. That's okay. But if you're going to write a business letter, or if you're going to write a business proposal, business pamphlet, or even an infograph, you need to vary your sentence structure. Because if you use the same sentence structure using the same words, your reader will get bored and lose attention. So all of this is to hook the reader into your whatever you're writing. And so your business letter email will have a simple structure. Remember, business letters go to people outside the company, while memos go to people inside the company. Now, if you're an adult, you're like, oh, duh, I've worked in an office, I own a business. You would think that anybody would know that. Once again, when I make this presentation, I'm not really sure of my audience. My audience ranges from 17-year-olds who have never gone into an office to work to people who own their own business. Because I have such a wide-ranging audience, on one end of the audience scale, I'm going to have people going, give me a break. I know that. A 5-year-old would know that. And on the other end, the 17-year-olds, oh, really? Is that how it's done? So, you know, I got to say, so as a teacher, and when you present something, you have to be aware of your audience too. And so you may have to state something that's obvious. Just don't do it too many times. And otherwise the people on the expert side will get bored. And then you can't have too many technical words because then the people on the beginner side get overwhelmed. So you got to walk a fine line. You got to try to stick to the middle. And so your business letter will have the same three parts as your essay. You're going to have an introduction, body paragraph, and a conclusion. Now, what's different in a business letter is that in the conclusion, instead of just summarizing the paper like we do in our essay 1 and essay 2, your conclusion is a call to action. In other words, you want the reader to take an action. You want the reader to get off his couch to buy your product. You want the reader to get off his couch and do business with your business so that you can make money. And actually, the call to action is like the most important part of the letter, because that's where your money is going to come from. If you write something really boring, you waste time. And so unlike an essay, the conclusion requires action, requires someone to get up and do something. So that's how an essay conclusion differs from a business communication or business letter conclusion. So what is the writing process in the workplace? What are the questions for analysis? And what is the format of a good email? So the format of a good email, business letter, or anything you write is same thing: introduction, body paragraph, conclusion. The writing process also is the same: pre-writing, writing, and rewriting. Now, when we do business and when we are in the workplace, we always have to act professional. Once again, the adults in the room are going to go, oh my God, that's so obvious. While the teenagers are going to go, really? What do you mean by professional? What exactly does that mean? Okay. And so for the teenagers in the room, we want to always maintain a positive attitude at work. And so when we write positive and negative messages, we have to follow a certain format. Now, if I had students here, at this point, I would stop the discussion because the adults in the room have all done this before. Then I would ask the adults in the room, what positive and negative messages have you written in business? What memos have you written? At this point, I would acknowledge the adults in the room, their knowledge, and bring their knowledge into this lecture. Since nobody's here, I'll just go on, okay? So how do we write bad news in business writing? We use the sandwich method. In the sandwich method, the sandwich method helps soften the blow of bad news. So basically, it's what you write, if you're going to write bad news, it's like a sandwich. You first start out with something positive, then you write something negative, then you end with something positive. Okay, so positive, negative, positive. Think of it like hamburger, okay? So that the bad part is in the middle. And so when I grade your papers, I'll say something positive, like you have great thesis statement, then room for improvement. You're missing your comma, you have too many sentence fragments. Okay, so that's the meat. And then you end with another positive statement like, you can rewrite this if you want, and you did right, you're a pro. In other words, I point out the other things that she did right. Usually grammar mistakes are the most prevalent. People usually understand the essay structure. So usually I'm complimenting people on being a pro at the 5-paragraph essay structure. So now you're going to go looking back at your papers and go, oh, that's why she wrote it like that. Yeah, I do use the sandwich method when I give you feedback. So that's an example of the sandwich method, where I try to say something positive, then I give you room for improvement, all your grammar mistakes, sentence mistakes, whatever mistakes, and then I write at the end what it is that you did do well. So that's how you give bad news. You use this, and you can use this method for anything. If you're giving somebody a bad job performance, you could start out with, well, John, you're very good at A, B, and C, but you really need to improve D, E, and F. However, I want to go back to congratulate you on your A, B, and C, that sort of thing. But not all bosses do that. Some bosses just come straight to the chase and just give you the bad news. If that happens to you, stay positive. And by all means, don't be defensive. That's like poison. So you should always be positive, acknowledge what the boss says, and then ask for clarification if you don't quite understand what he or she wants. That makes for good collaborative teamwork. Always stay positive. So the purpose, I went right out off the sandwich method. So the purpose of the sandwich method is to build good rapport with the client or with the person. And you also build a good image of your company. So how to organize informative and positive messages. Give any good news and summarize the main points. Give details, clarification, background. Present any negative comments as positively as possible. Avoid using not, avoid using no. So instead of saying, I cannot supply you with what you need, instead, you could say, but I can supply. In other words, if there's a delay in shipment, instead of saying, I cannot get your supplies in by January 3rd, instead stick to, the supplies will arrive June 30th. Okay, so stick to the positive, stick to what you can do and avoid the cannots. Okay, so present any negative comments as positively as possible. And one way to do that is don't use not in a sentence. Explain any reader benefits. Show how your idea or policy will benefit the reader or company. Use a goodwill ending, something positive and personal and forward-looking. So to recap, how we use the sandwich method, you give a reason for the bad news, you prepare the listener for the bad news in a professional, unemotional tone, as brief as possible. Present alternatives or solutions or compromise as a way out of the problem. End on a positive note. Ask for input or call to action to brainstorm and solve the problem. And all of these tips in giving bad news can also be tips used if you've got to give somebody a bad job performance review in order to maintain your relationship with your employee. The last thing you want is a discontented employee who resents you for giving him, bad news. You don't want to kill the messenger. So in a negative message, the basic information is negative. We expect the reader, or we expect the person who received the bad news, to be disappointed or angry. A good negative message conveys the negative message as clearly as possible while maintaining as much goodwill as possible. The goal is to make the client or the employee feel as comfortable as possible. And the focus is always on solving the problem. And so rather than bashing the person, try to solve whatever problem there is between you, because that's more productive. In other words, actionable suggestions. This goes way back to your peer review lecture, where we don't bash the other student for a bad essay. Instead, we give actionable suggestions on how that student can improve their essay so that they can improve their writing grade. So what is the sandwich method? Think of it like a hamburger, where you've got the top bun is a positive message, and then the middle bun is the negative message, and then the bottom bun is another positive message. And so that is how you would deliver bad news at the workplace. And most adults and teachers especially have already learned the sandwich method in many professional development. There are many names for this. It's known as the positive feedback theory. There's a gazillion names for the sandwich method. Interpersonal relationships or interpersonal communications. And so here in this section, I'm going to talk about interpersonal communications as it relates to if you're going to be working abroad or if you're going to be working in another culture. And so here it goes back to audience. If you're going to write to someone from another culture, you need to become familiar with that other culture. You don't want to be seen as the ugly American. I'll let you guys Google what that means. I think that expression came from the 50s when Americans used to travel to Europe. And in Europe, the Europeans know many languages, but Americans would go to Europe, just know English and expect everybody to speak English. And so that's where the expression ugly American, because Americans, they only know their own culture, ignore everybody else, and then everybody else resentful. Okay, you don't want that to happen. And so it's when you're going to travel to another country, if you're going to be a travel nurse and travel to another country, you need to become familiarize yourself with the customs, the traditions of that people. And if possible, learn as much as you can their language. And you'll find much easier dealing with people if you know their language. I think that each language is a window to another culture. So communicating across cultures. So this section will talk about how in some countries you have more of an individual-based culture, such as the United States, where everything is based on individual happiness, and each individual competes with another individual to be the best at work. And so that and each individual has their own individual right to happiness. Okay, that's Western style thinking, and that's also American, okay, thinking, more so American, even more so than European. And in Asia and other parts of the world, it's more group-based. In other words, you don't think about yourself. And if all you do is think about yourself, you're seen as selfish and young and immature by other cultures. And so in this section, I'm not trying to say anybody is better than anybody else. All I'm trying to say is everybody is different, and you should learn what those differences are And when in Rome, do as the Romans, as they say. I love that expression. So if you're going to be in Asia, and so it's more of a group-based culture. And so then when you make decisions, say in a business, it's the whole group that has to agree on a decision. It's the whole group's happiness is more important than your happiness. So you can't say something like, well, I want to do it this way. Instead, you would say to the boss, our whole group has agreed on a plan for this project. And our whole group, in other words, instead of saying, I think this is a great plan. And the interesting thing is that many American companies back in the 80s adopted the Asian way of doing things, of using more group-centered thinking, because it seems to encourage innovation. But that's a different paper. So communicating across cultures means you're aware of your audience and aware of where you are. So cultural awareness is important to global business and power, and power with good communication. Cultural awareness is important to global business, and powered with good communication skills is an ally in successful business worldwide. What exactly is culture? Culture is made up of agreed upon expectations where people interact. Specific behaviors or customs associated with certain groups of people need to be recognized to avoid misunderstandings. So that's what I meant by group-based versus individual-based culture. And also, the way we do our job performance review reflects the values of our culture. And so in this culture, it's about doing a good job means being competitive, doing better than the other person, create more productivity than the other person. And in other cultures, it's about having fun. It's more about having fun than doing business, or it's more about getting to know each other than doing business. So for instance, in China and Japan, when you go out for a dinner, instead of just cutting to the chase and doing the business deal, first you have to get to know that person. You have to say, hi, John. So I come from, Scranton, Ohio. I have a wife and 3 kids. What about you? You have a wife and 3 kids? Where do you come from? And so on and so forth. In other words, you have to establish common ground, get to know that person. And then you do business at the end of your meal rather than at the beginning of your meal, you see. If you just simply start out with, okay, John, let's go through with the deal. You don't ask any questions about, you come off as selfish to the other person. So you have to establish, so that's why different cultures have different customs, even down to how they do business deals, and how they evaluate employees. So the example that I gave here is eye contact, personal space, nonverbal communication differs from culture to culture. So in the United States, if you look someone in the eye, that's a sign of honesty. If you look away, that's a sign that, oh, he's lying, he's being deceitful. He's trying to think of a way in which he's going to try to trick me, okay? In Asia, if you look somebody straight in the eye, especially if you're young, that's considered really rude because you're assuming that you're the same status. Only people of the same status or peer to peer can look straight at each other. But if someone older than you talks to you, out of respect, you got to look down. And so eye contact is different from, Asia to America. Personal space. Now in Asia, it's okay to stand close for, in Europe, especially in Europe, men kiss each other. Pre-pandemic, this could change. And since the pandemic, I hear that even in Europe, they don't kiss each other. But I would think that after the pandemic is over, in Europe, men do kiss each other. And it's nothing romantic. It's like the handshake here. It's just to say hi. They're not trying to come on to you or try to be your husband or something. All they're trying to do is just to say hi. Hello, hey, how are you doing? Hey man, how are you doing? So personal space, whereas most American men would find that kind of uncomfortable, especially if another man comes up to kiss you. I remember when I was in Middlebury College, and I remember the college counselor had to tell the guys that it's okay for a European man to kiss you. It's equivalent to a handshake. It's no big deal. So in the United States, personal space, Americans like to have a lot of personal space. And in Europe, the personal space, it's okay to have less personal space, and that's not considered offensive. And so eye contact and personal space and other nonverbal communication differs from culture to culture. Another interesting one is McDonald's. Now we know that there's a McDonald's in almost every country. And in the United States, when you work at a McDonald's, you want to smile at the client because it makes the client feel, you're just trying to be friendly. In other cultures, we don't smile at people unless we know them really well, or unless someone told a really funny joke. And so in China and Europe, when McDonald's went there, they actually had to train their European workers. They had to train their Chinese workers to smile at people they don't know. That's a custom that's unfamiliar to people in other countries. In America, we smile at everything, at everybody. We teach our babies to smile at everybody, everyone, you see. And then we smile back at the baby. That's very American. But I'm not saying that Europeans and Chinese people don't smile at babies. I'm just saying as adults, we don't smile as adults to other adults unless we know them really well. So that's why if you go to Europe, you might notice not everybody's going to smile at you because they don't know you. It's not because they're trying to be like insult you or something. So most Asian cultures are group-based cultures. That is, the decisions are made for the benefit of the group. Most Western cultures are individual-based cultures. That is, decisions are made for the benefit of the individual. For instance, American business accepts competition and believes competition produces better performance in the workplace. In Japan, competition is thought to create disharmony in the workplace and best be avoided by having the group decide together what is to be done. In the US, success is based on individual rankings, but in other countries, success is based on your group ranking or your family or social ranking. Many people in the US value individualism. Other countries value the group. Japan's traditional culture emphasizes the group, although David Matsumusu claims that Japan is becoming more westernized in that now Japan places more emphasis on individual persons' goals and accomplishments. North Americans and Europeans put groups last, but Asians put North Americans and Europeans put the family name last, but Asians put the family names first. And so in Asia, it's okay to say, my family has worked in this business for many years, and that my uncle works in the same company. My cousin works in the same company. I come from a high-ranking family, and many members of my family work for this company. You can say that in an Asian environment, but if you say that in an American environment, it sounds like nepotism. Really? Your uncle works here, your aunt works here, so what exactly did you do to deserve your position? That sort of thing. And so in America, nepotism or having family rank it's all about each person and each person being equal to the other person. And in Japan and in other countries, it's about your family ranking. If you don't come from a high family ranking, you are out of luck. Diversity within the US. In the US, we all work with a diverse group of people. Diversity in the workplace includes gender, race, and ethnicity, region and national origin, social class, religion, age, and physical ability. Nonverbal communication takes place when we communicate without talking, but through our body movements like smiles, head movements, shoulder movements, facial expressions, or hand movements. From culture to culture, these nonverbal signals can be different. And so I already went over eye contact and shaking of the hands and avoiding, although nowadays I noticed because of the pandemic, Americans are also doing more bowing because to avoid shaking, and also the elbow bump, simply because of the pandemic. But I remember reading an article, and the Olympics were coming to Atlanta. And as each nation came to the Atlanta airport, they were training the young people who were greeting the foreigners at the airport, smile. Whatever you do, just smile, because smiling is the international symbol of hello. So you can't go wrong with smiling, And so that's what they were. Not all cultures smile at people they don't know, but it's so American to smile at everybody. So nonverbal signals. Also, many cultures are more formal than the US. So use formal English when you communicate or write emails, letters with other cultures. Avoid slang, cliches, contractions, and sports metaphors when writing to other cultures. Be clear and be adult. Do not write in second grade English. When I mean by second grade English, hey, how are you doing? How are you doing? I shoulda, like shoulda, woulda, coulda, should be should have, would have, could have. And don't use contractions like I've, he's, it's. You would say I have, he is, they are. So you got to write out your contractions for a more formal professional tone. Use complete sentences. Use the proper form of address. And don't say, hello, Brenda. You may want to say, hello, Miss Smith, or Director Smith, Professor Smith. So use that person's title. And then you tell your peers how to address that important person. So you don't address that important person. Hey, Brenda, how are you doing? You have to say, hello, Professor Smith. Is everything, that sort of thing. Be friendly, honest, and relaxed. So how do we define culture? Culture is a group of people with similar behaviors and similar customs. What kinds of values and beliefs do different cultures have? Well, different cultures have different nonverbal communication. They have different beliefs in group-based or individual-based decisions. Working and writing in groups. Now, here, when I give, in all of this entire presentation, when I tell people how to behave, this is the American way of doing business. And so this working and writing, this way of doing business, of being concise, of being positive, may not apply to other cultures. So this entire presentation pretty much applies to mainly American companies and how to behave in an American environment. So if you're going to be working and writing in a group, this is very American. Start on time. Come to the meeting prepared. Focus comments on the issues. Avoid personal attacks. Listen to others. Let each person speak once before you speak again. Everyone must be 70% comfortable with the decision and 100% committed to do it. Communicate immediately if someone disagrees, okay? So starting on time. The reason why I say this is very American and also British is that in France, in some countries, it's okay to not be punctual. You're like, what? A business meeting, not punctual? In America, it's like nobody would ever do that. If you're not punctual in America, you lose business. You have to always be punctual to establish goodwill. Remember, it's all about establishing and building goodwill. And I remember I was working in a computer room, and a very important looking businessman was standing outside the door of the computer room. He kept looking at his watch. He looked very impatient, and he also looked very annoyed. And then I heard he was standing next to another professor, and I heard him say in an annoyed voice, "This guy is late for his job interview. He's 10 minutes late." And then the other professor says, "Well, I guess we're not going to hire him since he's so late and doesn't know how to be on time." Then about half an hour, or then 2 minutes after that, the job interviewee comes running in, totally out of breath, saying, I'm sorry, I was stuck in traffic. But by that time, those two professors had already made up their mind. They're not going to hire that. You could see it in their faces, you know. And after the interview they did the interviews, you know, in the lobby, more or less. I didn't hear that part. But I remember saying to another professor in the computer room, I don't think that guy got the job. Other professors said, yeah, me too. He came late, even though he had a valid excuse. So within the first 6 seconds, that's how people make their first impression. If you don't start on time, you're out of luck. Active listening. So you paraphrase the content, feedback the meaning in your own words. Listen to what others have to say so you can learn from them. Mirror the speaker's feelings. Identify the feelings you think you hear. Ask for information or clarification. Offer to help solve the problem. So if, for example, your boss, so active listening means that you repeat what the boss just said so that the boss knows that you were listening to them. So for example, if the boss gave a series of instructions, first you need to line up your paper. You need to greet your clients warmly, for instance. Then after the boss finishes talking, then you would then say, yes, boss, so you want me to greet the clients warmly and you want me to paraphrase the content. Is that about right? So you're asking for clarification. And then the boss, yes. And the boss approves because he knows you are actively listening because you're able to repeat back the words of what was just said. And then you simply ask for, did I get that right? You ask for clarification to make sure you got it right. Always be positive. Always have a positive attitude at work. Avoid saying things you cannot do. Emphasize always what can be done. Be the solution, not the problem. Always have a will-do attitude. Seek out feedback rather than dread feedback. See group feedback as a threat, but don't see group feedback not as a threat, but as a chance to learn and grow. So if you have a growth mindset, you are going to learn and prosper in the business. If you're the type of person who waits until their annual job performance review in order to find out what he did wrong, and then just at that annual review, you're like this, you're not going to learn much, for one thing, and you're going to be very defensive and negative. Next thing you know, you'll be fired. Nobody wants to work with a stick in the mud. Everybody wants to work with someone who's positive, outgoing, enthusiastic. And for example, you would ask the boss, so am I getting this right? Do I need to improve? In other words, actively seek out feedback, actively seek out your boss for advice. And that way you don't wait until all the way until your annual performance to find out you did this wrong, because by that time they're trying to decide if they're going to fire you or not. Okay, so it's better to get, and see it as an opportunity, see feedback as an opportunity to grow. And ask regularly others how you, not just the boss, you could ask coworkers. In other words, somebody who's been there, like a senior coworker who's been around the block. They can also answer some of your questions. And so it's always about constantly improving yourself and constantly seeing yourself as a work in progress. And to have a growth mindset. And so when you have a growth mindset that you're growing, your boss grows to love you. And here I give an example of give actionable feedback. Okay, when you do give feedback, give actionable suggestions. So ineffective feedback would be, Jan is too laid back when she works in a group. This example I gave already. What does that? Then Jan would sit back and go, what does he mean by laid back? And an actionable suggestion would be, Jan, stop saying, at the end of every sentence. That's really annoying, just kidding. So what are the rules for working in a group? For in America and in Britain, be on time. How do you, and be an active listener. Be the the solution, not the problem. And have a growth mindset. How do you receive feedback? That's the have a growth mindset. How do you give feedback in a group? Give actionable suggestions. Why is it always important to be positive? Makes it easier for you to work with, for one thing. Nobody wants to work with a stick in the mud, negative person, or a grouch, okay? And why is it important to actively listen to your boss? You make the boss feel important and you learn, especially if you're new. You have to be willing to learn. You can't be like, you gotta be like an open book and not like all filled up. I don't know if you ever watched the show, the cartoon Avatar, in which and the Avatar, the original scientist who had been assigned to go on the mission to be with the people from another planet to learn about this planet. He was a scientist. He was filled with preconceived ideas, but then he died in a crash. Okay, end of that scientist. His identical brother, who had no idea of any of those people, any of the science, he had spent his time flying. I think he was a pilot of some kind, okay? He had been a soldier, a warrior. He knew how to fight off the enemy, okay? That was what he did. He wasn't a scientist. And because he was the identical brother, they decided to use the identical brother. You have to watch the show to understand that. Anyway, so when he came on the scene to take over and replace his identical brother, the indigenous people of the planet found it much easier to work with this guy who didn't know much, because he didn't know much, he was constantly going, am I doing that right? Oh, am I supposed to do this? You know, and he was more open to learning because he didn't have any preconceived ideas from his science, you know, like the scientist. Anyway, you got to see that movie, Avatar. It was really good. Forms of business correspondence. So if you're going to make an oral presentation, okay, so your first slide would be the title of the presentation. The second slide would be the agenda. The third slide would be item 1, then item 2, item 3. Just like I did at the very beginning when I told you that, you know, what we're going to do in this presentation is I was going to teach you how to construct a clear message. I was going to teach you how to write a business report, and I was going to teach you how to do business etiquette. So you would list what it is you're going to write about. So that's similar to your thesis statement and the 3 reasons, okay? Remember, when you have a thesis statement with 3 reasons, then those 3 reasons become your body paragraphs. Well, in an oral presentation, the agenda page is the thesis statement where you list whatever it is you're going to present. And then you have item 1, item 2, whatever the 3 items were on your agenda will become the middle slides of, or the meat of your presentation. Then just like you would in an essay, then you're going to write your conclusion and then your sources. So that's how you would write a business oral presentation on PowerPoint. That's why I said slides. So here's an example of a PowerPoint, the dangers of vaping. And so the agenda would be the thesis statement, vaping causes lung cancer, throat cancer, and stomach cancer. And so here you have vaping, slide 1, lung cancer, slide 2, throat cancer, slide 3, stomach cancer. And then you have your, it's just like, you know, and now we're getting into the nitty gritty. What's the format of a business email? And so here you have your subject line, your salutation, and then here you have your introduction with the thesis statement. Then you have your body paragraph, and then you have your closing, and then you have your signature block. Same thing here. So this is the business. Here you have your introduction, then you have your body paragraph, and then the last paragraph is the call to action. Same thing. Yeah, you know, you've got your salutation, you've got your introduction, then you have your thesis statement and introduction, Then you have your body paragraph, and that's it. So keep it short. That's why you don't have, you don't have a long, like a paper. And this is another example of the same thing. Now, when we do a business proposal, first we state the problem, then we state the solution. So half of your paper is going to talk about what is the problem, and the other half of the paper is going to deal with, but what is the solution? So when we write a business plan or a business proposal or a research proposal, that's very, very similar to a problem solution essay. So here in the first half, we're going to write the background of the business, qualification of the principles, state the objective of the principle, and then you state the plan of what you're going to do. So here you have the problem, and then you have your solution. So here the summary is like the abstract of your paper. The problem would be like your thesis statement. Then you have the solutions over here. Okay, and so this is also very similar to an illustrative essay, which I'm teaching in my other class, where the students spend 5 sentences in the introduction stating the problem, and then the body paragraphs are all about how they're going to solve that problem. Okay, so here is an example. So a carefully crafted business proposal can be a powerful catalyst for positive change. It can be and so creating a proposal, you've got to strike a chord with the audience. And so that requires proper formatting and compelling content. So what makes a business proposal effective? Having the right format will get your proposal read. So it has to be tailored to the audience, easy to read and understand, written in a confident, direct tone, professional in its presentation. And so here has to be professional. And so here you have the memo. And when you write the topic, the title, it should be very short. And in the title, you should summarize everything in 3 or 4 words. When you write your essay, you should also have a paper title that summarizes your entire essay content in 3 or 4 words. So your subject line is just like a story title. Then you're going to have your context of what the problem is. Then you have the background to the problem, and then you have the solution. So this one doesn't show all of it. Tips for creating effective memos. Style matters. Choose an appropriate design for your memo based on the setting in which it is being used and the message it conveys. In some cases, adding color may capture a reader's attention. Be concise to help ensure that your memo is read and understood. Its purpose should be clear and language objective and concise. Choose topics carefully. Make sure that the message you are sending is appropriate for the memo and doesn't contain sensitive information that you should handle differently. List all recipients. Send copies to anyone affected by the memo, and proofread to make sure you have no grammar errors. And so here are the parts of your business proposal. First, you want to state the names of who you're writing to. Then you talk about what is the problem. What exactly are you writing about? And then you give context to your problem. So this is, I go through part by part how to write a business proposal. So first you write what the problem is. You give the historical context of the problem. After you state what the problem is, then the last half of your paper, you're going to state the conclusion. So here, when we state the problem, in the first half, we state the history, the full scope of the problem, and we describe the problem, and we write a thesis statement, just like we would an introduction. In the second half of your proposal, you state your solutions. You state the benefits of your solution, because you want to convince the committee, your solution is the only solution. Therefore, they need to implement your solution and hire your company and your team to implement whatever change needs to be done to the company. So you want to eliminate other people's alternative solutions to convince the other businessmen that your solution is the only solution. So then in the conclusion, you would call to action would be that the company hires you to do the job and not anybody else. And so here you have the problem solution. You state the problem, you're aware of your audience, you give data and evidence stating that this is a big problem. Feasibility, so everything under feasibility, literature review, all of the rest of it, okay, from here on in, this is all solution. So here I would state the problem. The parking lot is way too small. Audience, other businessmen. Data and evidence shows that because we have such a small parking lot, many customers are discouraged from coming to our store to go shopping because they can't find a place to park. So that's the problem, small parking lot, okay? Discouraging customers. So that's the first three, you state the problem. How are we going to solve this? We are going to build a bigger parking lot, okay? That's the solution. They're going to build it, and you're going to hire my construction company to build that bigger parking lot. Feasibility, we will build the bigger parking lot at the cheapest price, okay? So hire us, so that's feasibility. Literature review. Go look at any of our competitors. We offer the cheapest price. So literature review means that you look at everybody else and you see what's out there and you try to see other solutions and you realize there are no other solutions but you. Then after you convince the reader that your solution is the best, you have the cheapest price, methods and procedure mean, okay, how are you going to go about implementing this bigger parking lot? And then you're going to say, for 2 weeks, we're going to, for 2 weeks, you're going to have to park. We'll provide the bus, and all the employees will take a bus to another parking lot that we will provide for you. And these buses will come every other minute. So it's not going to inconvenience the business or customers while we are building it. The methods, so that's the one part of the method. Second, it's going to take about 2 weeks, or it's going to take 3 months, or it's going to take, you have to give a time schedule. And then you're going to give a schedule of your building. We're going to lay the cement week 1. In week 2, the cement dries. Week 3, we're going to paint all the whatever it is. So methods and procedure, how it's going to be done. And everyone's going to be bused to the other parking lot every 2 minutes. So that's the methods, procedure, work schedule. Qualifications. We've been in business for 50 years. We are a family-owned business. We care about our employees. You see the letters of recommendation from our other, satisfied customers. Go look at our website. We have a lot of satisfied and I have a PhD in whatever the field that we're doing. Okay, qualifications. And so work schedule, that's the same thing as methods and procedure. Call to action, hire us. We can build that bigger parking lot so that you're not going to have that small parking lot problem. Hire me. That's the formal format of your proposal, is problem, audience, data evidence, feasibility, literature review, methods and procedure, qualifications, work schedule, and hire me, call to action. It's always about, you're the one that wants the business. And here I wrote what I just said down, okay? Assumptions, predictions, methods, assumptions. Predict what you already know about the problem. If you continue to have a small parking lot, I predict that customers are going to go to the store across the street. They have a big parking lot where they can have, and you're going to lose business because you have too small a park. That's predictions. Methods. Okay, I am going to, methods would be like, what am I going to do to solve it? I will build you that bigger parking lot. Limitations. Oh, the limitations that for a couple of weeks, your employees might be inconvenienced a little and may have to take a bus to the other parking lot. Data evidence. But data evidence supports my proposal. You need this big parking lot. Conclusion, hire me. I do a good job. I come from family-owned business, and references would be your letters of recommendation. Now I changed completely. So when you make any kind of presentation, you can use visuals, you can use numbers, and when you use visuals, visuals are like graphs, pictures, and when you use visuals, instead of, so if you have a lot of statistics to give, for instance, it's much easier to put those statistics into a pie chart or a bar chart so that the reader can visually see how all the numbers work, okay? Rather than read 50% of this, 20% of that, readers will get lost in all your numbers. So if you're gonna use numbers, okay, use a pie chart and or a bar graph or whatever kind of, you get to choose, because Microsoft Word and also PowerPoint gives you a lot of choices what kind of chart you want to use with your numbers. So what are the rules for working in a group at the workplace? So you want to be on time. You want to be an active listener. The format of your business letter: introduction, body paragraph, conclusion. Format of your business proposal: state the problem, state the solution. And then a call to action paragraph. That's it. And we are done with this week 7. We have 5 more lectures to go, and then you're done with having to see my face in your face every week. So this week, week 7, all you have to do is do your week 7 quiz and your week 7 forum, and you're done for this week. And next week, week 8, you are going to write your outline for your essay 2. And you can either write an outline or a rough draft. I leave it up to you to decide which one you want to do. And so I want to wish everyone a happy Memorial Day weekend coming up, and have lots of hot dogs on the Barbie, and have a great Memorial Day weekend. And I'll see you after Memorial Day next Wednesday. I believe we're going to be in June. Wow, it goes so fast. This spring is going like that. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me anytime. Let's see. So see you next week.